Should cadre deployment be scrapped? The policy has been flagged as an enabler of corruption and was also a constant feature during the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. The Commission declared the policy as unconstitutional and unlawful. Good evening and welcome to Unfiltered. My name is Aldrin Simpier. Those who are opposed to cadre deployment say it encourages political influence over municipalities and prevents them from exercising their public power to make sound appointments. It has been blamed for bad governance in municipalities, which has led to the collapse of service delivery. The policy is also fingered for the endemic corruption and maladministration at the country's state-owned entities. Meanwhile, the Democratic Alliance has taken the cadre deployment issue to court, and they've also made a proposal in Parliament around how legislation can end cadre deployment. Tonight, we're asking you, should the policy of cadre deployment be scrapped? Join the debate on Twitter as well as Facebook at Unfiltered SABC. That's on Twitter, and just search for Unfiltered SABC on Facebook. Let's welcome our guest this evening. ANC NEC member Dakota Lehuete is joining us. We also have with us tonight the Secretary General of the Mangaung Service Delivery Forum, Mpho Mujanaga, as well as the DA's Shadow Minister of Public Administration. But first, let's take a look at what Deputy President David Mabuza had to say about cadre deployment.
Of course, there are instances where people will try and obviate and disregard the selection processes. Those are minor incidences which happened probably at the level of municipalities, which is wrong. That's where leadership is being challenged. But in the case of the national government, I've never seen anyone who's appointed outside these protocols and rules that we've set for.
Well, that was the Deputy President speaking in Parliament last week. So let's first start off with Dakota. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Let's take a few steps back and ask, what was the intention behind cadre deployment?
Thank you very much, Aldrin, and good evening to all the viewers at home. Look, cadre deployment, it's a practice that is used globally by all parties in the world, and it is used mainly to ensure that we get the best amongst the descendants of our land, who are very loyal, who can ensure that our people get the best services they deserve. And I think even in our cases, the African National Congress, we started very well in the country. You would remember that we could deliver even over 3 million houses. We could deliver schools and many other infrastructure. We could even host international events, including the World Cup, with some among the best descendants of our land deployed in offices to ensure that our people get services. You would know that even just in Johannesburg, so it was a slum, but it was turned into an urban settlement. A number of our areas were very poor. Our people never had electricity, they never had water. But the challenge that we have is when that particular national interest was subsumed by personal interest, where people now started looking at other things other than the national interest and the national agenda of ensuring that each and every taxpayer, each and every ratepayer get the services they pay for, get the services they deserve as citizens of South Africa, because all of us as deployed cadres needs to understand we're not doing our people a favor. Our people are paying us to give them services, they are paying tax, they are paying rates to municipalities. Now, as a result, that is not a favor. It's a contractual agreement that needs anyone to be conscious of the fact that wherever you are deployed, you need to do your utmost best.
So if you look at one of the documents, Omkhabula, looking at cadre deployment and looking at some of the criteria that's there, what's evident is that it was not necessarily a policy that says that this is the type of person that we want to get in, no matter what. However, though, it's also merit-based. So where did things go wrong?
No, they went wrong. That's why Elias said they went wrong when national interest was subsumed by personal interest.
But how? How did that happen?
That happened out of self-aggrandizement. It happened out of greed. It happened out of the point that some of us, despite being the most decorated freedom fighters. We lost our consciousness, we lost our ability and our commitment, and the sacrifice we took to understand that this is the cause of bringing about a better life to our people, not for self-enrichment.
Mpho, what has the impact of cadre deployment been like for people living in Mangaung?
Thank you, Aldrin. Let me thank the opportunity and greet everyone, including all the viewers at home. Look, I think also we need to take a cue from what Ntate Loheta said, where the cadre deployment strategy has actually been betrayed by the ruling party, and evidence is based on what Ntate Loheta has already said. And anyone who gets out of the contract agreed on is guilty of a crime. It means where we are at this present moment, that the law admits the contract has been transgressed, and for sure people are expected to be charged of a crime against humanity in this country. But also we must understand that as and when we got into the democratic breakthrough in 1994, we all understood that we are getting into a battlefield, a war against poverty. And you needed soldiers in the forefront to wage this particular battle. Now, cadre deployment is also derived from a strategy and tactic, which is the military science concept. And at this present moment, all those who were actually in charge of discharging this particular theory into practice have actually betrayed the Cadre conference, a consultative conference on cadre deployment, and including the ideological work that was led by a commission set up by O.R. Tambo and others there. At this present moment, we find a situation whereby the currently, and Mangaung is a pointing case at this present moment, Section 139(7) has been instituted in Mangaung, where an intervention team was brought by the National Department. The situation in Mangaung, the situation in Maluta Pofu, the situation in Metsimaholo, it's worse than it was a few years back. And who is in charge? The deployed cadres of the African National Congress as a ruling party.
Okay, we'll get Dakota to respond to that, but let's just quickly bring into the conversation Dr. Leon Schreiber, who is the Shadow Minister of Public Service and Administration of the DA. Dr. Schreiber, good evening, and thank you so much for making time for us. Do you accept the point that is raised by Dakota Lehuete that one of the crucial elements around the cadre deployment and the policy also speaks to the transformation of the country and also transformation within the public sector?
Good evening, Aldrin, to the guests and of course to the viewers at home. I think that the conversation so far has really come across as quite out of touch with this, the reality on the ground. To answer the first part of your question there, we have laws in this country, including the Constitution, that outline requirements regarding transformation, and it is those laws that is supposed to govern appointments to the public service, and it is adherence to those laws that should be the standard against which we measure the public service. So it is not correct to say that cadre deployment by a political party is required to ensure transformation or service delivery. Those are standards and rules that are set by the Constitution. But when we listen to what Deputy President Mabuza said in that reply, it is quite amazing to actually hear that, because he says that he's not aware of any instance of someone being deployed into the public administration. Well, he is the current chairperson of the ANC's Cadre Deployment Committee, and the DA earlier this year exposed minutes that show him very clearly over the past 3 years directing the operations of that committee. So the reality is that cadre deployment is real. It is a committee chaired by the Deputy Presidency, and as the Zondo Commission's findings have made absolutely clear to anyone who's read that report, it has been central to state capture and to corruption and to the decline of service delivery in South Africa. If I may, I just want to make one point absolutely clear. It is also incorrect to say that this is something that's happening as a standard practice around the world. When it comes to political positions like a president or a premier or a councillor or MEC or MPs, those are elected, and in a list system like South Africa is one, that is the party's prerogative to assign people to those positions. But what cadre deployment does is that it goes far further than anything else that's standard practice politically around the world, by giving the ANC the power to appoint people into the civil service, director generals, heads of department, engineers, town planners, not on the basis of their ability to do the job, but I think we heard the magic word earlier from the MEC, on the basis of their loyalty to the ANC.
Yeah, but for instance, in the US, when the president appoints judges, for instance, and those judges appear before a panel, the decision that's taken by the president is influenced from a political space, right? It's a political party that says this is the judge that we would like to see being deployed. So it's not unique to South Africa.
Yes, but I think if you look at the recent record of the politicization of the judiciary in the United States, it's very clear that it's causing serious problems there too. So we are measured here by the standards of the South African Constitution. And I'm glad you raised the judiciary, Aldrin, because in those minutes that we managed to expose, there are instances when the deployment committee, chaired by the deputy president, actually discussed and recommended its preferred candidates in a very explicit way for appointment all the way to the Constitutional Court. So I think the American example actually shows the danger of over-politicization, including of the judiciary. But those minutes make it clear that cadre deployment has its tentacles into the court system in South Africa as well. And that's why it's so urgent that we need to stop it before we get to a point where we say this judge does the bidding of this party and that judge does the bidding of the other party. That's where we're headed in terms of ANC cadre deployment.
So we'd love to hear your opinion this evening as well. What's your take on cadre deployment? Do you believe that it's a policy that should be scrapped, or is it seen as a tool to foster transformation? And what are the limitations thereof as well, considering what Justice Zondo had said in the report as well, decisions that are taken behind closed doors? And welcome back. What's your take on cadre deployment? Do you think that it is a policy that should be scrapped? Let's look at some of the tweets that you've sent through, and then we'll get our panelists to respond to those. This one from Wela says that, what kind of a question is this? A CEO is often allowed to bring or choose his own executive team when he or she is appointed. I can't imagine the ANC, with its, let's assume, policies, appointing a DA member in, say, an SOE as an executive. This disharmony, the mess. NB, this has little to do with the ANC. And this one from Grey Boy saying that no, it's a globally acceptable practice. However, the process of selection must change. Pick capable people who can deliver, not looters who channel money back to the ANC. Okay. Dakota, you wanted to respond quickly?
Yes, no, I just wanted to respond to the point raised by the representative for the Democratic Alliance. The issue of cadre deployment is not only limited in South Africa only to the ANC. You can go to Western Cape. They are also using cadre deployment. It's only probably because their minutes have not been exposed. But just to go backwards, when the DA took over Cape Town with Helen Zille as the mayor, do you know who's the first person she fired at that time and replaced that person with a DA person? Was the city manager, Advocate Wallace Mgoqi. Wallace Mgoqi was a municipal manager who was in his second term as a municipal manager of the city of Cape Town. One of the people who were delivering, who anchored Cape Town to be one of the tourist destinations in the continent. And competent as he was dismissed because he was not a DA person. You can go to every municipality in Western Cape and every institution, even here in Johannesburg. They even take people as far as Cape Town to come and work in the metro of Johannesburg. It's something that is there and it gets to be practiced.
Is there a difference, though, in the positions that those people would hold? He was speaking earlier on about people being appointed through the Public Service Act and those people who are political deployees. So is there a difference at all?
Look, there is that particular difference.
Yeah.
You know, public service, we need to appoint people on meritocracy.
Yeah.
People with the relevant merits, relevant capabilities, relevant technical know-how. We don't have to appoint everybody, and we must make public service professional so
Yes.
that no administration can claim hand on our public service. Whether there is no administration, the public service must be able to can run and provide services to people. I know, for instance, there are a number of countries like Belgium, there was no government there for over 500 days, but because they have a strong professional public service, the country could run.
Yeah.
People could get basic services. And the sooner we also move to that particular point of meritocracy and appoint people who are capable, not only limited to being loyal to the party, but also understanding the national interest against the personal interest.
Okay, Mpho, quickly.
Look, I think it's very hypocritical of what Leon is trying to advance. Equally so, it's very disappointing of what the ANC has become in terms of this particular strategy in its implementation. We have a situation whereby he himself, Leon, has been deployed by the DA in the position he is serving now as a shadow minister, including as being
but that's a political position.
It is a political deployment, whether you call it either way. And I'm not here to defend the ANC or any other. But at the same time, what I'm trying to say to you, it's none of these organizations are actually addressing the issues on the ground that the people are actually faced with. And the practical and typical example is the current process of appointment of the city manager in Mangaung. The process that was concluded on last week Thursday, which is very flawed, and legally will prove that in the court of law, that all, if not almost, the panelists have an interest as to who supposed to be appointed as the city manager in Mangaung. Not according to the merits, not according to the Cadre deployment strategy, not according to the Public Service Act, but according to their own factional interests that are actually hindering transformational agenda and deteriorating situation in Mangaung. And we cannot allow that to continue anymore. In these instances, there is a misconnect between to understand dialectical unity of theory and practice, where this strategy in theory is correct, but in practical terms, when it is applied,
Okay, I just quickly want to deal with this letter that was sent from it came from the ANC in the Chris Hani region, saying that this serves to invite all deployees in management of municipalities and local government entities in the Chris Hani region to a meeting with the ANC REC officials. Municipal managers and CEOs have a responsibility to ensure attendance of all managers in their respective municipalities with entities in the form of the CHDA and the CDC. Where does the ANC draw the line that says that we can't demand of CEOs to be in an ANC meeting?
Look, I'm sure that was creativity from that part of the region, because you would know public servants, once they are appointed to service the public. And once they are invited, they in a party work or in a party invitation, they must go there as their individual members, not as a municipal manager, not as a CEO. And I think if that is the case of a region of the ANC, it's a serious mistake. We are not supposed to reduce.
And how often do these mistakes happen, you know, that lead to corruption, that lead to maladministration sometimes?
Look, as the ANC, we are very clear. Even in our resolutions, we are very clear, even in our oath of membership. Most of us, when we get a deployment opportunity or an opportunity to serve our people, it's to bring about a better life to our people, not to a self-enrichment, a self-aggrandizement, to create anybody who's responsible for such acts. Those acts are malicious, are malafide. They must be held accountable. and stand where possible before the law,
Okay.
so that a proper sentence can be meted against their criminal acts.
All right. I see Mpho is burning to respond to that. We'll get your response just after this, and then we'll also hear from Dr. Schreiber the policy or the legislation that they are proposing to end cadre deployment, and also looking at that court case where they're challenging the policy of cadre deployment. That conversation when we come back. And welcome back. Getting some closing remarks from our panelists this evening. Dr. Schreiber, that court challenge at the High Court, as well as the proposal that you've made in Parliament on the bill to end cadre deployment. Just quickly touch on those.
Sure, thanks, Aldrin. I just, if I may, for 2 seconds, just quickly respond to 2 comments that were made. The first one is I think the contrast between, I'll be very quick, between Mangaung and Cape Town is actually a great comparison, because Mangaung, as has been mentioned, is under administration and is in a complete state of collapse, whereas Cape Town was turned around after 2006. And I think that that demonstrates the difference exactly between cadre deployment and the kind of merit-based appointments that the DA stands for. Then I will answer the question about the court case first. We are in court in January of next year. This is, of course, to enforce the finding, but that was also made by the Zondo Commission, that cadre deployment is unconstitutional and unlawful. So with that court ruling, we believe that will be the moment that we're able to begin abolishing this practice.
Dr. Schreiber, unfortunately, we're running out of time. My apologies. Dr. just quickly, 30 seconds from your end. Closing remarks?
Look, we have given, through our last conference resolution, a mandate to the Public Service Commission to ensure that we professionalize the public service in our country. We bring meritocracy as part of the characters and requirements to ensure that we get the best cadres for the required deployment, so that we don't have a situation.
Okay, and that recommendation was also to scrap the deployment policy. Quickly, Mpho, closing marks, 30 seconds.
When we get out of it, that Tilogwete must be arrested for really misleading the country. Because these are the things that they've been defending, these are the things that they have ensured that their own fellow comrades and family members get into these positions of power. And the leadership of His Mahashule in the Free State is a typical example of what is happening in this country.
Thank you so much for your time. That's Mpho, Dakota, as well as Dr. Schreiber. Thank you so much for choosing us this evening on S3. My name is Aldrin St. Pierre. See you again next week, Monday, same time, same place, right here on S3.ins.